my next question: do you think all fighters need to go through the amateurs before they turn pro?
So I believe that you do need amateur experience. How much is kind of the question, right? How many amateur fights you have, what pedigree of the amateurs you have, um, and how you develop as a fighter. You know what I mean? You see a lot of guys. Perfect example, Teofimo Lopez. He grew up in here. I've been in the gym. I've watched Teofimo Lopez probably spar close to 100 plus rounds.
Okay.
You know, I've watched him fight in the Golden Gloves. I've watched that kid, you know, at local fights. He always had a kind of a professional style. You know what I mean? I've seen him lose fights in the amateurs because of his style, you know, where he won fights, but he lost because of that. So I do believe that a fighter should get up to at least, you know, depending on who they are and when they start, at least up to, you know, 40, 50 amateur fights.
Okay.
You know, that's kind of where you're going to get a little bit of the experience of seeing different styles, different postures, different people, you know, and get a taste for competition at that level, because it would be very hard for you to just jump right into a no fight, right?
Yeah. I'm only asking that because we've seen the recent crop of like 2 or 3 fighters who don't have that much amateur experience, but they're translating into really good fighters as boxers. You know, Connor Ben, you see David Benavidez, and what was the other guy's name? I can't remember the other guy's name. But they're turning out to be really good fighters without having this big amateur background and pedigree. And you know, you can't really knock them for not going to the amateurs because they are so good. But when you look at David Benavidez, you go, well, he got a chance to spar with Gennady Golovkin, Dmitry Bivol, and all these other great guys who gave him the credit. It was like, he gonna be all right. You know,
How many amateur fights did he have?
David Benavidez?
Yeah.
I think he had like 15.
Yeah, I was gonna say, wasn't it like 13 or something like that? Yeah, I mean, some guys are just exceptional talent. I do believe, you know, perfect example, Lorenzo doesn't have that many amateur fights. I think he has like up to about 15 fights, if I stand correct, anywhere from 13 to 15 or something like that.
Okay.
So yeah, it just depends on the style and where they came up in the gym. I know Benavidez came up under his dad. His brother was already fighting. So a lot of those guys, man, if you're coming up in a gym like that, you know, you're getting that.
You're seeing it all. You're seeing it all.
That first class work you really need right there. So yeah, it really is kind of situational, I guess you can say. But I do believe you need some experience, you know, in the amateur field. You know, you don't want to give a guy too much experience, you know, where they're over fighting.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You see some of these kids, man. Yeah, we got a couple of kids around us that are, you know, 12, 13 years old, already got 30 plus fights. You know what I mean? 40
really?
fights. And that's a ton of fights. You know what I mean? That's that activity. You know, now what do? You're already 40 fights in. You can't tell me how many wins and losses you have. You know what I mean? And that experience is going to be kind of forgotten by the time you get to, you know, 16, 17. You know what I mean?
Yeah, because now by the time you are 16, 17, there's a new wave of information that you're getting, and you're forgetting all that other stuff that just goes out in one ear and out the other at that point.
Yeah. So I mean, you know, it all depends. I mean, I had briefly coached at a gym down here in South Florida, Sweatbox, where George Kambosos kind of comes from, in Xander Zayas.
Okay.
So I had trained Xander Zayas for a little bit over there, and at that time I believe he was about 14 or 15 years old. He had already had 70 fights. Yeah, you know what I mean? That's a ton of experience. You know what I mean?
At 14 years old.
14 years old, he had about 70 fights. 14, 15 years old. I'm trying to think of how, I think he was about 14, 15. Yeah. So he had already had about 70 fights. You know what I mean? That's a ton of experience. You know?
That's crazy.
Yeah. So, you know, but listen, it worked out for a kid like that. There's a perfect example. He's seen everything. He's a high level amateur. You know how many fights Gabe Flores has? Gabe Flores Jr.?
No.
I know he has quite a bit of, because I believe, if my mind's correct, I think he's like a 9-time national champ. So he's got to have a lot of fights. He's got to have a ton of fights, you know. But there's a perfect example of it, you know. And I'm I'm a big Gabe Flores fan. There you go.
Some
There's a
guys just
Mexican
have
fan
it
I
though.
am. There's a
Some
Mexican fan I like, or a Mexican fighter I like. But his system, his style, I feel like he had so much amateur experience. He had a hard time transitioning into pro boxing. You know, I don't know if you watch much of him, but